I might even get a little bit emotional talking about it because the majority of my life was centered around how far I could take soccer. 15 minutes into the first game, a player from the other team came across and hit the inside of my knee. My kneecap was literally hanging outside of my leg. I went from this athlete that everyone looked up to basically nothing, not even able to go to school anymore.
Meet Nathan Nazareth, a dropshipping expert today. He lost $10,000 and his store in one devastating blow. Now he guides others to avoid those pitfalls and build resilient e-commerce success.
When I got into dropshipping, that's when everything changed mindset-wise. Like going from $5,000, $6,000 a day to waking up and seeing $0 on your Shopify dashboard, like that hurts. After everything everybody had told me, you know, how could I go back and tell everybody, guys, I was wrong? Truly, there is no difference between somebody behind the screen watching this. The only difference is that I just refuse to give up.
Nathan Nazareth, how you doing, brother?
Fantastic, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you. I think we've been in contact for maybe 6 months or so, maybe even a little bit longer trying to arrange this. So I'm really pleased that we actually got the opportunity to do it today. And thank you for coming down. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
For sure, yeah, I'm sorry about that. It's my bad. I've been in and out of Dubai so much over the past year, and I know we've been in contact here and there trying to set this up.
Yeah.
And even now, I'm only here for the next 10, 15 days. So I'm glad we found the time to sit down and get this in.
Yeah, no need to apologize. I appreciate you taking the time. And like I say, excited to have this conversation. So where do we begin? I mean, I guess I'd start by first just speaking on your age. You mentioned you're 24. Your IG and your Instagram been blowing up recently. I think you're almost at 1 million subs on each of the platforms, which is great. And I don't know whether you've really taken the time to reflect on that. I know you've been doing your personal brand for sort of 4 or 5 years or so now. So I guess I'd start by saying congrats, you know, really, really growing and everything's looking good. But the reason I brought that up is in the eyes of all of these people or all these new followers that you've maybe amassed over the past sort of 6 months or a year, they're aware maybe of who the Nathan is now. You know, Nathan at 24 years old, Nathan who's, you know, already had the success, got the girlfriend, got the car, living in Dubai, traveling, and maybe they have not a distorted perception of who you are, but they see who you are now. They maybe haven't seen the 6 years of the grind in dropshipping and ecom to kind of get to where you are today. So maybe just for my benefit and the benefit of the viewers, could you maybe take it back to kind of where it all started? Because I know even prior to ecom, you kind of had some trials and tribulations on different business models, and it'd be great to just, in summary, see what that journey looked like and unpack it.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, it's funny you say that because it's something that I actually do think about quite a bit. I think about the fact that, you know, people see me now primarily because I have sort of blown up more in recent years, but they haven't seen kind of everything that went into it. And my biggest regret as a content creator or someone with a personal brand is not filming more in those earlier stages. And I say this to people all the time who are just starting out and who are asking me for advice. I say, like, the best thing that you can do is just pick up your camera or even your phone and just document every little thing that you're up to, because I promise you that'll come in handy later down the road. Because when I started, it's like I didn't even know what a personal brand was, and I wasn't sort of concerned with that. So all my life, I had never really been filming anything. In fact, like my old iPhone, up until I was probably 16 or 17, I ended up breaking and losing all of my old footage.
No way.
So had I had all those old photos and videos of me in high school and me learning and studying and whatever, like it really could have helped with sort of the transformational styles that work so well today. So I always tell people, had I just filmed more in the earlier years of my journey and saved that footage, I probably could be well past 1 million subscribers on YouTube or followers on Instagram, because it really does make a difference. And people, you need to have relatability when you have a personal brand and you create content. And, you know, if you start off at this sort of higher point, which I didn't necessarily, because I still managed to start my personal brand, like you said, around 4.5 years ago. But if you start off at sort of a higher point, then you really miss out on, you know, a lot of the journey that could have been captured and could have been shared, and people would really resonate with that. But to go back in time, so probably, you know, I say I started at this point 6-7 years ago in entrepreneurship, but really I feel like I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and that just comes down to the fact that I've always been taking risk. So ever since I was a little kid, like all I can remember is in my free time, apart from school and sport, I would try to make a little bit of extra cash, like at by any means necessary. You know, I'd go out, I'd be that kid starting the lemonade stand. In elementary school, I used to make duct tape wallets and sell them. I used to go to my local convenience store, and I would beg the manager to let me buy like entire packs of candy at a cheaper price. And so I'd do that, and then I'd sell candy out of my locker. So anything that I could do to just get my hands on a few extra dollars. And I think one thing that really helped me with that is I grew up in a somewhat affluent neighborhood. I wouldn't say it's like, you know, the richest neighborhood in town, but it was a place where generally upper middle class people lived. And so for me, it was like I saw a decent amount of wealth around me, and in my social circles and in the public schools that I went to. Again, we're not talking about private schools and kids pulling up in Rolls Royces or anything here, but just like, you know, upper middle class wealth. And so for me, my parents really didn't give me any allowance. They didn't give me any extra money. But I love them for that, because their philosophy on raising me and my two brothers was like, we want to give you all of the opportunity in the world, but nothing extra. And so what that meant is basically, if I wanted to learn a new skill, or I wanted to play a sport, or whatever it may be in that regard, they would do whatever they could to make sure that I could play on that soccer team, or that I could, you know, take that online coding class, or whatever I was trying to do at the time. And so I'm super, super grateful for that, because I had a lot of unique experiences throughout my childhood, and I tried pretty much every sport under the sun. Sports and athletics was a huge thing for me, and I really took to soccer or football. And that was sort of my main sport. I also played basketball, volleyball, rugby, track and field, you name it. So I was kind of doing all the sports in high school, but my club team was soccer, and that's what I wanted to take professionally. So for most of my childhood, I was just doing whatever I could to become a better soccer player. And of course, in my off time from school and sport, I would be trying to make money as well. And so again, I think that's kind of like the first sort of risk that I took, where I was like, I know I don't want to be ordinary. I want to be a professional footballer. And so I started training on my own. I started getting into every team or special class that I could. Again, my parents thankfully granted me all the opportunities there. But, you know, it reached a point where, and this is, you know, I might even get a little bit emotional talking about it, because the majority of my life here was sort of centered around how far I could take soccer. And, you know, when I was 16 years old, I was pretty much playing on the best team you can play in the area, or in the country, or my side of the country at least. And we were going down to a scouting tournament in San Diego. It's called the San Diego Surf Cup. So this is a very big deal for kids that are, you know, 16 years old, and you go and you can get scouted by all the major American colleges. And it was my dream to go to an Ivy League, particularly Stanford. And I wanted to play on the Stanford soccer team. And then I wanted to go pro after that, because, you know, going back, academics was always very, very important for my parents. You know, my dad came from a third world country, came from Kenya in Africa, and he actually moved to Canada. And he worked extremely hard his whole life to give, you know, me the opportunities, and me and my brothers the opportunities that he didn't have at an earlier age. And so the biggest thing that he wanted to give us, the biggest opportunity of all, was to be able to send us to university, or, you know, post-secondary education. And so for me, it was like, I just didn't want to let him down, or let my parents down, especially after everything that they've been through. And I've seen how hard they've worked their whole life to set me up like that. And so I knew I wanted to do school, and I also wanted to do sport, right? And so I went to this scouting tournament. I was in contact with, you know, the head coaches from Stanford and from a bunch of other schools, and I trained all summer for it. I remember like every single day, like 5-6 hours in the gym, on the pitch. And I was feeling like super ready to get out there and, like, you know, impress and hopefully get something locked up, because at that age, it's the most key age. Like, I know you graduate at 18, but at 16 is kind of when those big offers come through. And so this was sort of like the big chance for me. And 15 minutes into the first game, a player from the other team came across and hit the inside of my knee, and my kneecap was literally hanging outside of my leg. So basically every single ligament was torn. I passed out. I woke up, and it was brutal. It set me back a year. So it was basically 12 months before I'd be able to make a full recovery. And that year is the most important year of any, young athlete's career. Because that's sort of your window of opportunity to, get scouted by these teams. And, during that period of time is really when everything took a big shift for me. I kind of lost my identity. So when I went back to school and I was on crutches and whatever, I was no longer the athlete playing on all the sports teams because I couldn't play for pretty much a year. And at that point in time, this is, I think, when kind of the business switch flipped on, because I was like, holy shit, like I have all this free time now. What am I going to do? And, at the time I was a little bit older now, so it wasn't about duct tape wallets and pixie sticks. Now I was thinking, okay, what's my target market going to buy? And so I went to fireworks. I went to pocket knives were pretty cool at the time with like kids in the high school.
Attention e-commerce sellers, if high shipping costs, slow delivery times and customer complaints are eating into your margins, then you may already know that these things can freeze your payment processes and drive your cost per acquisition through the roof, limiting your growth. That's where today's sponsor, Commercive, can help. They streamline everything from manufacturing to global fulfillment with 5 to 10 day shipping to over 65 countries worldwide, same day processing, and even USA warehousing for brands that need it. There are no hidden fees, just fast, reliable logistics and a dedicated WhatsApp support team available to keep you updated in real time. Hundreds of sellers have already switched to Commercive, saving tens of thousands on COGS and shipping, and finally scaling without the headaches. So if you're still relying on outdated agents and overpriced fulfillment partners, it's time to upgrade. Head to commercive.co or click the link in the video description to get your free quote and find out how much you could be saving.
And stuff like that, and maybe a little bit of alcohol on the side, right? And so I think the things that I was selling were, it wasn't necessarily like illegal for me to be selling them, but it was, you're not really supposed to, especially as like a youth, like a kid in high school. And so I just I didn't have much of a regard for the consequences at the time, and I wanted to make money. And so I couldn't do much else because I couldn't play sports, which was, the biggest thing for me. So I started selling fireworks and knives and stuff out of my locker in school, and I was making, a solid amount of money, a few $100 a week, right? And also at the time, I got into reselling. So I'd always been kind of into like sneakers and clothes and stuff like that. So I went online and I got access to these bots, and I started buying up hype drops from like Supreme and Bathing Ape and these different clothing brands. And I would come to school and I'd sell them to my classmates. And I was in the largest school in the district, so luckily I had a big sort of market of hungry buyers. And again, generally like an upper middle class area, so people could afford nicer things, or at least their parents could, and they had extra money in their pockets, and that's what I was taking advantage of. And so I was selling all this stuff, and then, long story short, somebody lit off a firework that I sold them in the backfield of the high school, and they basically snitched me out for selling the fireworks. And so next thing I knew, I was in the office, the principal's office, and they were searching my bag, and they found all this stuff that I shouldn't be selling. And they suspended me from school indefinitely, and they deemed me as a hazard to the entire school district because of the fact that I had pocket knives. So that was the biggest concern. And of course, I would have never ever thought in my head that I would ever do something with the knife. I just thought that they were cool, and as did other kids, and I was selling it to them. But just the fact that you're bringing weapons onto the school premises was enough for them to suspend me indefinitely. So, here was a point where I was now making probably $1,000 a week, even from everything that I was selling in profit, to basically losing my ability to continue high school. And, when you get expelled from school, that's on your record. So now you can't go to university as well. And so this was probably the darkest period of my life where, my parents, they were beyond angry with me. They just were so disappointed to the point where like they wouldn't even really speak with me. And I was sitting in my room every single day while everybody else is at school. I was suspended indefinitely and waiting to hear back. And so I had to go for a hearing at the school district, and I had to plead my case as to why they should let me back. And I made this whole master plan of how I was going to get my life back on track. And, at this point in time, I had totally forgotten about sports. Like there was bigger concerns and priorities on my mind. And the biggest thing was getting myself back to high school. And I was sending emails, I was setting up phone calls and doing whatever I could until ultimately, like I said, I had this hearing. So I went into the school district and I talked with the top dogs, basically running all the schools in the district, in the city. And I pleaded my case, and I heard nothing back. And this is like when I was like really at rock bottom. But I said that I was going to keep moving forward and keep learning online, and I had a computer at the time, so I was just like educating myself in my own way for a couple of weeks. And then ultimately one day I got an email back, and they said after reviewing everything, they feel that I'm not actually a threat to the school district and to the school particularly, so they let me come back to school, right? And so now I came back to school, and I went from basically being a sort of C-level student who didn't really care and only cared about sports and business to acing every test, like top of every class, because I made it my mission, my master plan, to come out of that school with an insanely high GPA. Even though I couldn't go to college, it was just something that I wanted to do, right? And, my principal was so shocked with my grades and my turnaround, and the teachers were all saying positive things, that he eventually wiped off the suspension from my record, and I was able to go to university again. And this was crazy. My parents were thrilled, were over the moon. This is a really, really crazy turning point in my life, and I think that was the first sort of thing that happened to me, or that I guess I created, that showed me that no matter what obstacle I'm up against, like I can always find a way forward. I can always solve the problem. I can always find a solution, no matter, how down bad I am in that moment. And, that was truly rock bottom for me in my life. And the fact that I bounced back and I came out of that in less than a year and then went on to business school after was really, what showed me anything is possible.
Yeah. And first of all, really appreciate you sharing that with me and obviously with everyone watching, because it is something that's probably quite personal to you. So yeah, thank you. And on reflection, not only did you bounce back once, you did it twice in some senses, right? Like the blowout of the knee. And I tore my ACL. I've not had my whole kneecap come off, and I know how much that affected me, and how, because I was a similar age to you, 15 or 16, and I tore my ACL, and it was really bad, like for quite a long time. And I don't know that my knee ever like fully recovered. So I can only imagine what that was like for you as well. So sports is obviously going to take a big setback. But you, rather than like mull on that too much, you just thought, okay, how can I kind of move forward in another way, and went to selling different things and things like that. So that was kind of one obstacle that you already overcame, but then to have it happen again, where you've been pulled back, suspended, but then overcome that by acing all of your tests. Like, it would have been very easy for many people to probably just give up, especially at that age. Like, if your parents are disappointed, if you're not sure what to do, if you're stuck at home, but rather than kind of like sit there and not know what to do, you kind of took action and decided to turn it around at that age. And funny enough, you jogged my memory, because something similar happened to me, not to that degree at all, but I got my grades back from my test in school. And I remember picking them up with my mum, to see how I did in my GCSEs, which you probably have an equivalent in Canada. And they weren't very good. They were well below what I was expected to achieve. And I remember the disappointment on my mum's face. Like, she expected so much more from me. So the next year I resat all of the tests, and the exact same thing as you. I was like, I'm only going to come out of this with A's. I think there was a couple of B's, but like completely turned it around. I never really thought about it like that, but I know the power of a disappointed parent and what that can do to you at any age. So yeah, I think not once, but you did it twice. And I think that's probably what set you up to become the person that you are today. I mean, I speak to quite a lot of people on this podcast, and a lot of the time, the people that have achieved the most in the shortest amount of time have lost everything more than once as well, and normally been in a very, very bad position as a starting point. So I think the fact that you had that early proved to you, like you say, what you're actually capable of, and having that belief and that ability in yourself, not only to bounce back, but to come back stronger. That's something that you can keep repeating throughout life. And earlier you described yourself as a bit more of a risk taker. Well, when you take risks, you're going to have pullbacks, right? So it's how you then deal with that situation and push further ahead, which sounds like is about what you're about to go on to now with the next step and how it transpired.
100%, yeah. And I'm super grateful and fortunate for that time period of my life, and like you said, so early as well, because it just built so much resilience to the point where genuinely I feel like nothing phases me anymore, because I just think back to how I felt in those moments where I felt like, really I had nothing going for me. Like I went from this, sort of athlete that everyone looked up to and was playing all the sports to basically nothing, like not even able to go to school anymore. And I'm just sitting in my room at home at age 16 wondering how my life literally hit rock bottom, and there's no way for me to escape. But of course there was, because I came up with that master plan and I turned everything around. And I actually think back to those times a lot, and that's something that's really helped me throughout my journey over the past few years. And so that's why I it's a little bit off topic, because it's not necessarily business related, but it really is the backbone of then everything that I've went on to do, because it just built that sort of unshakable mindset within me that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay and I'm going to find a way forward, because I have that sort of that belief and that proof that I've already done it to the worst extent, the worst degree possible, to know now that anything else that happens to me career-wise or anything is minor compared to sort of some of those experiences that I've been through.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact saying or expression, but it is something like, it's not the situation itself, but how you react to that situation. And I think just having that, like we said earlier, that belief in yourself and that ability to take yourself back to that point in your mind and realize the things that you have overcome is very powerful. And I think that's what comes from reflection, something that I don't know that people do that often. I try and make time to do it. Dedicate a bit of time to do it, like on a weekend while I'm in the sauna or the ice bath, to kind of reflect on things. But it is important, because I think it's very easy to get so caught up in the next thing or the next goal and the next target, or facing a certain challenge, and it's easy to have that immediate wobble of, oh, okay, like how am I going to overcome this? But you set into panic mode initially, and then when you stop, breathe, take a step back, it's like, no, I can do this, I know I can overcome it. And lo and behold, you always do. The problems get bigger, but your resourcefulness and the ability to overcome them also just keeps going. The levels get higher. So
exactly, well said. Yeah. So after that point, like I said, I went off to business school, and this is where really my entrepreneurial career actually started. So I guess I was late 17, early 18 when I went off to business school. And I went to school in a new city. So it was the island. I'm from Vancouver, BC. And then I went to school on Vancouver Island in a city called Victoria. And they have a pretty big school there. It's largely a university town. The business school is pretty solid. It's ranked pretty well. I got into every school that I applied for in the country, because I finished off my senior year, I believe, with a 93.5% average, so very, very high. And this was a school I chose to go to because I had a lot of friends going here. I also wanted to live away from home and have that experience. And of course, it was ranked pretty good as well. So it just made sense. And I went off to this school, and I said, I'm going to take this as seriously as I can. My parents have given me this opportunity. Everything that I've been through up to this point has allowed me this opportunity once again, which was almost taken from me. So I need to be the best student that I possibly can. And so as much as I wanted to start a business and do all this stuff and make all this money, because I wanted to create a better lifestyle, and I always wanted nice things, and I wanted more and more and more for myself, I had to kind of pull it in, and I was like, I need to be the best student that I can. And so I started going to all these classes, these lectures, and taking it really seriously, sitting front row, learning as much as I possibly could, heading back to my dorm room and just studying the textbooks. And, the first exam that I ever had, I remember, was in Com 100. So it's kind of like a general business course. The professor was reading off the results of the exams. And he said that the highest scoring individual scored a 29 out of 30. And I was thinking, damn, that's crazy. And there's like 250 people in the lecture hall, and we're getting our tests back. Yeah. And I turn mine over, and it's 29 out of 30.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there like, holy shit. I just got the highest grade in the business class out of 250 people in this massive lecture hall.
Yeah.
Damn. And so that was like a really eye-opening experience for me as well, where it's like when I set my mind to something, like I know I can achieve. And again, just like building on top of what I've already built up in terms of my mindset. And even to this day, I think mindset is so important because remember, prior to that, I was getting C's, and I didn't really care about school because my identity was different. I always assumed I was the athlete, and I never assumed that I had that level of intelligence to be, top of the class. But it turns out that I did, but only when I believed in myself, right? And so after that point, the test scores just kept rolling in, and I was practically acing everything in the first couple of months of my first semester at university. And again, university is harder than high school. So I saw people around me flunking out and failing and all of this, and I was just sort of soaring above everybody. And I was like, wow, like I feel like I can do this without as much studying and without as much time as I thought that it would take. And so that's when I was like, okay, like I need to make money.
Yeah.
So I opened up my laptop and I searched up how to make money online. Right? Classic. And I watched a dozen YouTube videos. Even between every lecture, I would run home from class, and I would just was obsessing over how to make money online. I can't even remember why I thought it was on, why I thought of making money online, because before I had always thought of making money physically, just selling stuff to people. But I think it was probably my environment, because in university I was using computers a lot more. I was just open to other people who were, my roommate at the time. He was building a custom PC, and I think he was dabbling into maybe selling some stuff on the dark web. I don't really know because he didn't fully disclose, but there was people doing stuff sort of in the online world. So it kind of just opened up my eyes to what's possible out there. So again, started researching how to make money online, came across every business model in the space, although back then it was there's much less content and much less polished content. So it was kind of just very raw and sort of early days Shopify and all this kind of stuff. And so I was watching all these videos, and I actually sort of turned away from dropshipping in the beginning, and I turned away from crypto and Forex and trading and sort of all the other business models, because I wanted something that I wanted to take the easiest route possible to make as much money as possible. And at the time, what I thought that was starting an agency. And so I realized that in the city that I was in, it was a much smaller town than the city I grew up in. And there's a lot of mom and pop shops, but none of these businesses really had any presence online. So they didn't have social media accounts set up. They didn't have websites set up. So I figured, let me call up these businesses. I've been on social media my whole life. I'm a Gen Z. I've practically, grown up with all the internet and all this stuff. So I was like, I think I can provide a service here. So I started calling up all these businesses. In some cases, even door knocking. I would go and, walk around in sort of the main street of the city and ask to speak to managers, and basically rejection after rejection. They're like, what do we want with you? You're just some first year, kind of college kid. And I was wearing a suit, and I was trying to act all polished and professional, and just doing whatever I could to say, hey, let me build a website for you. Let me make a Facebook account for you. You don't have any online presence. This will help a lot. And I kind of dove in head first. I was learning a lot about social media advertising on my own on YouTube, and I think I picked up a couple online courses at the time, but I really just dove in head first. And yeah, about 100 rejections later, and I realized I needed to change my strategy. But I never would have realized that had I not just failed a million times first.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that I had the resilience again, and I just kept moving forward. And I realized that nobody really wanted to pay me because I had no proof, I had no case study, I had no experience in the game. But what if I could turn that into my advantage? And so what I did is I started pitching these business owners on the fact that, hey, look, I don't have any experience, but I'm an 18-year-old kid in business school, and I'm ready to work extremely hard, and I'm driven and I'm motivated. And in fact, I want to work for you for free for the first couple of weeks to show you what I can do first, and then we can discuss possibly payment or retainers after that point, right? And what happened was, I think within the next 5 or 10 calls, I signed my first client.
Nice.
Because I realized that, people don't want to pay me a couple $1,000s straight away when I have nothing to show for myself, but they'll take a chance on working for me or letting me work for them for free. And people love that approach. They love the fact that I'm this like hustling, hungry 18-year-old kid, and these other entrepreneurs, I think they resonated with it, or they found some empathy for me, and they're like, okay, let's give this kid a shot. Yeah. So it really was all in the angle, and I made my biggest weakness there into my biggest strength. And after we signed that first client, after I signed that first client, then within about 30 or 60 days, I'd signed 2 or 3 more clients with the exact same strategy. And then those clients started referring me to other clients. And these were like local businesses. So like yoga studios, roofing contracting companies, just whatever I could work with to set them up a website, a social media presence, and then start running Facebook ad lead generation campaigns. And so after about 3 or 4 clients, I started to get swamped with work, and I realized that I have roommates, I have people around me. I mean, I'm at business school. I can just start hiring, from all these people in my classes. And that's what I did. And so I started hiring people to do outbound. So, call up more businesses. I found a Google business directory of every business in the city. I also started hiring people to help me out with the operations, the ads we were running, sort of the day-to-day and working with these businesses. And we built this agency basically out of my dorm room in college within 6 months to over 25,000 in rev. And I think that was probably around 10 to 15,000 a month in profit.
Nice.
So pretty crazy as like an 18-year-old kid with just starting business with like a few months of experience and already hitting that sort of those 5-figure months in profit, right? And so this is when sort of everything took a crazy turn, because, for me to personally take home, $10,000 a month, it was great, but it wasn't really life-changing money, because I needed that money to upgrade my lifestyle a little bit, to afford nicer food, to buy the textbooks and not have to constantly beg my parents to, buy things. There's, when you go to university, there's a lot of costs associated, not just the tuition. And so thousands of dollars a month even can be spent on the costs of living at university in a dorm room and buying the textbooks and, buying any materials that you need and constantly buying your own food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's not living with mom anymore. It's a different game, right? So, and for me to also spend all of the money that I was making would be stupid, because I don't know, the business is so new. Things are fluctuating month over month. And of course, I've got to pay taxes and everything too. So I had that in the back of my mind. So really, even though I was making 5-figure months, I was like, okay, I can only spend a couple $1,000s a month of this safely and comfortably, because I never know what's going to happen next, right? And so it really wasn't like life-changing money, but it was insane because it allowed me to take my lifestyle from basically like the bottom of the barrel to like everybody else. And that's cool because like I said, again, like somewhat affluent area, somewhat affluent school. So everybody else had, what seemed like thousands of dollars a month to spend from their parents, and I didn't. And so now I was like everybody else, and in fact, even better, because I had a little bit more money in my pocket, and I was able to go to the nicer cafeteria spot. I was able to go out for a nice dinner on the weekends and kind of all that stuff as well.
Yeah.
And then, one of my clients introduced me to dropshipping. So she was selling a ebook or sort of a guide for women to improve their health, flexibility in their body after pregnancy. And she was doing this, like she was ripping with this on cold traffic Facebook ad campaigns, basically.
The good days.
Yes, the good days. And that reminded me of the dropshipping videos that I had watched. And then for me to see somebody kind of doing what dropshipping was in real time, a little bit different, but same idea in real time, and actually working with this client, I was like, holy shit. Like I can take one product and I can sell it like thousands or potentially even millions of times. This is like crazy, because right now I'm servicing all these agency clients, but I feel like I'm working a job and they're all my bosses, and I'm constantly like stressed and I'm worried, and I'm afraid to spend, the $10,000 a month in profit that I'm making, because I never know if the next month we might lose a client or whatever, and I need to do all this sort of forecasting, and I'm just like worried about spending any of that money. But then when I got introduced to dropshipping, I was like, wow, this is like next level. Like I could make like $100,000 a month doing this, right? Yeah. And so we were still having the agency clients, and we still had that business going, but I tried to sort of buy back as much of my time as possible from it, even if that meant the profit suffered a bit. But at least that profit that I had coming in, and again, I didn't spend a lot of it because I was worried, but that profit that I had was now my startup capital for dropshipping. And so, back then we didn't really have like TikTok organic and kind of all this stuff, which I would have started with had we did have that. But back then it was pretty much like Facebook ads was just like the go-to way to start a dropshipping store. And that's also where my expertise was, because I was doing that for the agency clients. So albeit it was lead gen, so it was a little bit different than, kind of conversion-based advertising, but same idea. And I knew how to use the Facebook ad platform quite well at the time. And so, yeah, I just jumped in full steam ahead as per usual. That's kind of the theme by this point, is just jumping without really doing too much sort of research or learning, and kind of learning as I go. And I'm super grateful that I did that, because I think a lot of people early on in entrepreneurship, they get trapped in analysis paralysis, in overthinking, in overwhelm, when really the best thing that you can do is just dive in head first and then figure shit out as you go.
Yeah, I'd like to add on that, because it's so true. And coming from someone who previously had a scarcity mindset, who grew up, somewhere that I always had food on the table. Like, it was never like that. Like, we always had nice things. We had PlayStations growing up. Like, my parents weren't short of money, but they always taught me to save money, and to never use credit, and to only ever spend what you've got. And these are all really good traits, I think, to have. But it put me into a scarcity mindset, and that meant that even when I started my dropshipping business back in 2020, same as you, I had money coming in, but I'm like, okay, I've got a VA though, and my cogs and all these different things, and what about taxes? I don't know what that's going to cost. And it made me afraid to spend money. And I was always monitoring my ROAS, like, oh no, I could get it a little bit higher and have a bit more money. And I didn't spend the money. I was even too scared to take money out of the company. But had I reinvested that in guidance or mentorship, or speaking to someone who can lay out the blueprint for me, I probably would have 4x that business in quite a short amount of time. But instead, I still exited the business and sold it, but I never took it to the heights that it could have been. And that was because I had a scarcity mindset. I had limiting beliefs, and in a way, it's what was the word you described for it? The decision paralysis, basically.
Analysis
paralysis. Like, sometimes when there's so many different moving parts and you lack the knowledge to know how to get to the next step, you do just become paralyzed. And it's not that the business can't get to that next step, it's that you're limiting taking the business to the next step. Like, as long as the financials make sense, the margins are okay, the profit's there, you can always keep leveling up the business with another opportunity by adding another arm to the business, whether it be Meta, TikTok, organic, SEO, whatever it might be. But there's always another avenue that could be doing better, which is going to aid to the overall picture. So I just wanted to add to that, because personally it's something that I experienced. I'm glad I understand these things now, maybe a little bit late at 29, but you have to go through these things and for it to experience it yourself, I think, to truly look back and think, actually, if I knew what I knew now, obviously in hindsight, I could have taken it so much further, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think just to backtrack, I want to clarify, because I think maybe my message might have been a bit misconstrued. When I was making about $10,000 a month with the agency, I said that that was not quite life-changing money, when in fact it is, and it was life-changing money. But the reason why it didn't really change my life was because I had the scarcity mindset as well, and I was holding on to the majority of it because I was so worried. And I think, you know, it's nothing against you know, the way that I was raised or anything. Again, I'm super grateful and fortunate, but it's just everyone around me, I didn't really have any entrepreneurs or any risk takers in my circle that I had seen growing up. And again, my parents were both very academic focused. They both did many years of university education as well, and, you know, multiple degrees and all this stuff. And so that's what got them, particularly my dad coming from a third world country, that's what got him a better life. And so that's what he knew, right? And so that's all I had seen and all I had known was like, get educated, save money, one day be able to afford a house, right? And then kind of you have a comfortable life because you can have a house, you have a good salary from, you know, the education that you've built up and the job that you've received because of that. And then you're able to, you know, have kids and be able to take care of them and provide them the same opportunity to be able to go to college. I didn't really see the other path, the other side of big risk of spending a lot of money until later in life, right? And so that's why I was, even though I was entrepreneurial, my thinking about money didn't match that of a true successful entrepreneur at the time. It kind of more matched somebody who's maybe middle class or upper middle class that makes maybe 6 figures a year from their job. And that's kind of the mindset that I had around money at the time. And yeah, I think, and now what's funny is when I got into dropshipping, that's when everything changed mindset wise. Like it shattered all of my beliefs about money, because, you know, I set up a few stores. I tested the first product ever I tested was resistance bands, like the workout sets. And I made a couple sales, but I ended up losing money on that one. And I think it was a lot of failures, like 14 different product tests, a handful of different websites that I'd set up, probably $5,000 to $10,000 in Facebook ad costs just down the drain. But I'd been there before, and again, resilience, so I knew that it was only a matter of time before I would hit it, especially after seeing it firsthand. And then also at the time I was consuming a lot more YouTube. Shout out to Biaheza and Jordan Welch. I think those guys the most were the ones that inspired me earlier on. And you know, now what's crazy is like I'm personally friends with Jordan Welch. I've connected with him, and you know, Seb Georgiou as well, someone I used to watch way back then. I'm friends with him as well, and we're actually might be working together on something coming up. So it's like it's insane where life can take you. You know, back then I was this 17, 18-year-old kid watching these guys on YouTube that had made millions by the age of, you know, 18, 19, just a couple years older than me. And here I am today, you know, 6, 7 years later, friends with some of the guys that I used to watch way back then. So for anybody watching this, you know, maybe they see me, they see you, they see other guys online. You might be friends and business connections with us in a few short years of putting your head down and working hard. And because truly there is no difference, you know, between me and between somebody, you know, behind the screen watching this. The only difference is that I just refused to give up, and I just had more years and more time in the game because I just kept my foot on the gas and kept going no matter what. And in a few short years, you could be exactly where we are today. You know what I mean? It's
very true. I just wanted to add one thing in there about the product testing and relate it back to the door knocking, because like you said, you knocked on like 100 doors. of no's, and it's kind of similar when you first started testing products. Obviously, I'd imagine you have a much higher success rate now because you understand the market and ICPs and you know what's in demand and things like that. But at the start, if you are testing multiple products, it's no different to knocking on those doors, trying to wait for a win, right? And I know someone who spoke on like door-to-door sales before, and he just said his mindset was that every no he gets is the next door's one step closer to a yes, you know. And I guess it sounds like you applied again something from your past to when you were first testing those products, and that's kind of what got you through and allowed you to keep pushing.
100%. That's a great connection. And yeah, so after, like I said, about 14 failed product tests, this took me up to, I think, and I still had the agency, so I was still making a bit of money and able to, you know, support myself and a decent lifestyle at the time, even with the losses from all the dropshipping stores. This took me up until probably, this was right at the beginning of C19. So I can't remember if that was 2020 or late 2019.
Yeah, 2020, I think. Yeah.
So yeah, this took me up until then. And basically, I sold UVC sterilization lights. So this was my 15th product. And these products, you can sort of wave them over your phone, keys, watch, like any high-touch surfaces or areas, and they will get rid of all the bacteria and the germs from the UVC light. And talk about perfect timing. I mean, you know, right at the very beginning of the C19 outbreak, and this product that I had launched, and it was strategic. It's not like, you know, it was completely random. Like I knew that people were going to be a bit afraid of germs when I came across this product, but I didn't know just how well it would do. And within a few short weeks, with everyone panicking over C19, I had basic video ad creatives, basic image ads, and I was getting 5 to 6x ROAS on basically cold traffic Facebook ad campaigns, which is like crazy. I mean, I know back then it's possible and it happened, but for people who are actively dropshipping now, they know how crazy it is to be getting like 6x ROAS on a brand new product test on a cold traffic campaign. And so I started scaling this up like crazy. And within, you know, the first couple of weeks, we were doing $5,000 days, $7,000 days. And this was when I was like, holy shit, like it started to shatter every belief that I had about making money. And I realized that like, it genuinely felt like money wasn't real when I'd wake up in the morning and refresh my dashboard and see that. And to think that so much of this was profit as well because of how crazy the return was on the ads, it was like, this was life-changing money. And so within 2 months, I went out, I bought my first car, I bought a Range Rover in cash. I started treating friends and family and, you know, off of the revenues from the business. And this was, you know, in hindsight, it was a big mistake, but it was an amazing time in my life, I think, looking back on it, even though it was a mistake of going out and spending all this money, because a couple of months later, a few $100,000 in sales later, or even a few $100,000 in profit later because of how profitable it was, I got a cease and desist. So Shopify store got shut down. Facebook feedback score fell below a 2.0 because people were upset. You know, products were showing up damaged, defective, faulty. I got scammed over $10,000 by working with a Chinese supplier that just didn't ship the products. So all this crazy stuff going on as I'm starting to scale this, which eventually led the store to being, you know, shut down. And this was a really, really interesting time because going from $5,000, $6,000 a day to waking up and seeing $0 on your Shopify dashboard, like that hurts. It really affected me at the time, I think, especially because I had upgraded my lifestyle so much and everybody around me had started to think, wow, okay, you know, he's actually doing it. Because before that, everyone's kind of laughing and no one really thinks that you're going to be successful and all this. And so it really, like, it affected me to the point where, like, I couldn't let down like the facade of, like, you know, my success to my friends and family. So I had to uphold that image that I was still successful, even though the store came crashing down, because I couldn't do it. After everything everybody had told me, you know, parents were saying, stay focused on school, don't worry about this online business stuff. And, you know, friends and other people in my life told me I couldn't do it. And then they see me pop out with the Range Rover and, you know, buying jewelry and clothes and stuff. And they're thinking, wow, like he really did it. But then for that to happen, how could I go back and tell everybody, guys, I was wrong. I have to sell my car. I have to do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I couldn't. So I was kind of in this, not, I wouldn't say depressive state, but I was very, very down on myself this period of time. And so I had to, again, screw my head back on and just like start from scratch and just pick up the pieces where I left off and learn from all of the major mistakes that I'd made, like scaling too quickly and using stolen content, not getting my own content, just like scraping Google images. Other mistakes that I made was like not prioritizing the customer as much as I should have and the customer experience, not working with the right suppliers and vetting them. So just a whole myriad of mistakes that I had made that had led to the downfall of that store. And looking back on it, I had an opportunity to make millions and millions of dollars with those products if I knew what I knew today. But it's always hindsight, right? And so regardless, I'm glad that I still came out of that with still a decent amount of profit even after all the chargebacks and refunds. But I definitely had to, I was definitely worried there, especially when the chargebacks were rolling through and I'd already purchased my car and spent a lot of money and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that was, that was a really interesting period.
These are maybe some of the risks I think that people don't often vocalize about ecom is the opportunity for payment processor holds, for your store to get shut down by Shopify, chargebacks. Because when people are dropshipping from China, as you know, like a lot of the time, if you've not got a good supplier or a reliable agent and your fulfillment time isn't good, you've got products that are going out, maybe shipping delays, poor customer service if you've not quality checked the product or you've made minor improvements to it. Like there's a lot of things that go into it. I think sometimes when people are sat behind a screen, and I see it a lot on YouTube now, people like speed running, launching a store in 3 hours, ripping someone else's ads, ripping someone else's content, like copying their store. It's very inauthentic, and I think it's giving dropshipping a bit of a bad name. Like, it's something I've been thinking on recently, and it's becoming a bit scammy, a bit like crypto now, like a bit like pump and dump. Like you're just running up a store that you've copied all of other people's assets, not you particularly, but people on YouTube kind of promoting this. But what they're not talking about on the back end is like, you are selling these products to real people. You are copying a real business. Like, if you're going to do that, fine. But like, where's your level of authenticity, and think about the repercussions that may come off of the back of that. You're not building something stable. Like, you can still bring a product to market that has demand. You can still source a product from China that is similar to what your competitors are selling, just an unbranded version, and go through the motions. But when it comes to taking other people's content, ripping their ads, it's a bit of a grey area. And I don't know how, I think it's been going on a while, but people are just like vocalizing it and pushing it more on YouTube. So it feels like it's happening a lot, which is a shame, because I feel like it gives dropshipping a little bit of a bad name in some ways. But all that dropshipping really is at the end of the day is ecom. Dropshipping is just the fulfillment model.
Yeah.
But there's the way it's being pushed lately. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I want it to go back to kind of not how it was, but like, it's a real business. It can be a real business, and I know you've got ecom businesses as well, as have I, and it should be thought of more like a real business. There are real repercussions to your actions, and also there are many things that maybe don't get talked about that I think people should talk about a little bit more.
100%. I think people have really normalized like sort of some of these things like stealing content and ripping ads, and kind of that's became like the norm to like start a dropshipping store or like start selling a new product. And it's almost like you said, like it's drawing some parallels to like pumping a crypto coin, like pumping a new dropshipping product, when like you said, there's a lot more that goes into a dropshipping business. And even with that, dropshipping is just the fulfillment method. It's just like to get your foot in the door, and then what you can actually build. I mean, you can go on to build the biggest company in the world. It's possible, and start with dropshipping, right? So I think, but that's also something so unique about dropshipping, is that there's like so many different ways to go about it. And you could be, let's say, hopefully you're not doing anything illegal and you're not, stealing from real businesses, but you could be a pump and dump dropshipper and you could make money. I think today, though, things are a little bit different, and you want to take more of a branded approach, because like you said, there are a lot of people doing the pump and dump style. And I think back, 5 years ago with the UVC store that I was talking about and some of these other products, I was doing the pump and dump style, but I didn't even really know it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And just because of my lack of experience and lack of time in the space, I was sort of full-fledged on these pump and dump stores, and I don't regret it. But I do, because I did learn from it. And after that store as well, I learned a lot from all the mistakes that I made. And I went on to like refine my system and fixed all of the places that I went wrong. And then started a bunch more stores after that and sort of started to have some success, and then started to learn about what like branded dropshipping really is, and how to like actually make a real business and make a real customer experience that, you know, people love and they love to buy from you and they enjoy, and you actually have returning customers. And I think now more than ever, dropshipping or just e-commerce is becoming a game of customer retention and not customer acquisition. Because you see, back then it was like with the pump and dump style, it was like, you know, how can I acquire customers for as cheap as possible? That's how I'll make a ton of profit. But now, you know, we've seen year over year in the space, social media ad costs are rising because large corporations are spending more of their marketing budget towards Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok because they've seen the success these platforms yield. And so with that, ad costs rise for everybody. And the only way to get around, you know, ad costs that have risen by 30% over the past year is to build something real, is to build something where, you know, yes, you might be acquiring customers at break even, but if those customers love buying from you and they love your product, they're going to come back. And if you have, you know, email lists set up and SMS and everything that a real brand would have, that's how you're going to actually make profit and make money in the long run. Yeah. Right. And so I think we're only moving more in that direction because of the fact that media costs are rising. And it's super important that all of us in the ecom space understand where we're headed. And also, I think it's just not the best idea anymore to be, you know, ripping off everybody else's stuff, and you should have some level of authenticity in what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you want longevity, you need that. I think there's something that you mentioned in one of your YouTube videos when you're talking about what it takes to be successful in ecom, and you said something along the lines of it's essentially whoever the greatest do you remember? Something like essentially like the greatest marketer is essentially the one who's going to go the furthest. This time last year, I was living with my parents at age 27. Today, I live in my dream home in Dubai. If I knew then what I know now, I could have achieved this in 6 months instead of 3 years. Within my Google Ads Ecom Academy, you can learn how to scale e-commerce businesses with Google Ads. These strategies helped me work with known ecom brands like CheeseGeek, as seen on Dragon's Den and invested in by Stephen Bartlett. I also scaled my brother's business, Trope Official, to 1.1 million in sales in 12 months, as well as many, many more. The Google Ads Ecom Academy is designed for all levels, beginners, intermediates, and experts who want to learn how to successfully scale e-commerce businesses. If you want to win with Google Ads, see the video description for more details. All right, now back to the podcast. It wasn't those exact words, but something along those lines. I'm going to kick myself now for forgetting that. But I completely agree, because if you are just taking someone else's ads, someone else's product, someone else's landing page design, and then just running meta ads, I don't feel like you've really learned anything in that process, especially about marketing. Like, you can still bring a product to market, and it's much easier to do so if you do all the foundation before, like understand your ICP, their wants, needs, desires, like do the market research, look at the level of competition, Google Trends, keyword data, like look at what's actually there, and you can bring a product to market before even copying anyone else's ads, doing anything, just based on the data that you have available. And I think that's something that's often overlooked. Where was I going with that? The reason I mentioned that is you said that, marketing, and I wanted to add one other thing that I've taken from this discussion, and is mindset. I think the other thing that you need is mindset, and I think you're a perfect example of that. You know, I don't think it matters what business model you went into, you would have been successful at it based on the things that you're saying. Like there's no doubt about it, and the new things that you're working on, no doubt those will be successful as well. And it's not because you've got some crystal ball, but you might as well have, because of your mindset, you know. And I think that's something also that doesn't get spoken about enough, and it should be more, is like, whether you think you can or you think you can't, like, you're right. And that's like a saying I've heard before, and it just kind of came to my mind. Like, it all starts with your mind and what you truly believe you can achieve. Your only way of really shifting that normally is by failing. You can do mindset stuff and, and visualize and think about what you want to achieve and kind of visualize it. And that stuff does work as well. But the best way, I think, is by failing, and then overcoming that situation. So not failing and giving up, but failing and thinking, okay, how do I now get past this? So I think, to summarize, only because unfortunately I think we've run out of time, maybe there's something you'd add, but I would say from this conversation, I think it's having the marketing skills and treating ecom like an actual business that it is, and also just having the mindset, and fortunately, if you do have reliable people that you can work with out there, like yourself and me, and not necessarily turning this into a pitch, but like, you can gain the guidance to accelerate that process, or do what me and you did and, do it yourself, which is the way you're going to build probably the best mindset. But keep in mind, it's going to take longer, and it's going to come at the cost of your own time, to get to the desired output. So I don't know. I think those are maybe some good closing thoughts. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, I love that. I think, you hit the nail on the head. My thoughts exactly is that the two most important things for success would be your mindset, and then also your ability as a marketer.
Yeah.
To be honest, everything that I've done in my career thus far has came down to my ability to market and get attention, right? Because there are a lot of fantastic people out there that can build amazing products, that can build websites, that can build physical products, can do manufacturing, that can do all this stuff, right? And it's like, well, how come there's so many people selling the same products, but yet, some businesses turn into Apple and other MP3 player businesses completely die, right? Yeah. And the more you analyze it, the more you realize that it's the marketing, because it's your ability to bring in customers, because any business's problems at any department, at any level, can be solved by growth. Mm-hmm. If that company can bring in more customers and have more revenue, they can afford to then go and hire the best talent to clean up and fix any issue in any department of the business. But the only way they'll be able to do that is by growing and having amazing marketing. On the other side of things, you see products that, aren't necessarily revolutionary or aren't, anything crazy, that go on to do tens of millions of dollars a month. There's even some educational products out there, like, let's say, Andrew Tate and the Hustlers University, where, the product maybe is no different than a lot of other courses and a lot of other information being sold online, but why is he able to do millions and millions and millions of dollars a month with the product? It's because of the marketing and the marketing genius behind his personal brand, and how people resonate with that. And I think there's a lot of similarities between dropshipping and getting attention with ads, and also running a personal brand and getting attention with content. And so that's, probably why I ended up having success with the personal brand as well, because of the marketing skills that I built in dropshipping. And now I think about that, anything that I'm doing moving forward and into the future, I want to play to my strengths and my skill set, which is marketing and getting attention. And if I need help operationally, or need help, with an area that I have less expertise in, I can always hire out for that. Yeah.
Love that. Yeah, I think those are some great closing thoughts. I think there's been a lot that we covered in this podcast. Probably could have been a 2-hour one. I'm a bit gutted we didn't do a 2-hour, because I think there's probably so much more we could have gone on a tangent with, but we'll save it. We'll run up another one in future maybe. But yeah, I just want to say, Nathan, really pleased that you came down. So glad that we did this. And yeah, just thank you very much for your time. Where can people find you? I think you're available on like most platforms. Is it just at Nathan Nazareth?
Yeah, you can just find me. It should be Nathan Nazareth on pretty much every platform. If you want to consume some of my YouTube educational content, then go to YouTube. If you want to kind of stay up to date with like my daily life and see kind of what I'm up to while also getting a little bit of value, you can go to my Instagram. If you just want like short form motivational stuff, you can find me on TikTok or some of my sub Instagram pages. And if you want like super raw, unfiltered, like daily thoughts, you can go to my X or my Twitter. So.
Yeah. What I would say is Nathan's content's really good. I've been watching his YouTube and his Instagram. I don't use X too much, but all these platforms are great, and it's a great way to reach out to Nathan or keep up to date with his content. So definitely go check it out. Thank you again, bro. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the pod, and no doubt the viewers will as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.